filmmaker Robert Rodriguez joins us today on a very special episode of Raiders of the Lost podcast. It was so much fun to actually meet Robert Rodriguez, tour his huge studio in Austin, Texas, and actually sit down and have a really cool 20-minute conversation with him about filmmaking and his upcoming movie, Hypnotic. We're so excited because we got invited down to Austin, Texas. He has his own movie studio. It is massive. It's called Troublemaker Studios. He films everything he makes there. He shot Sin City in its entirety there on his massive green screen lot. He shot Alita Battle Angel. He's got huge empty streets and neighborhoods from that filming, and also they make all their own props, sets. So it's so cool to pick his brain about his production, about him and his sons, how they work together, especially on this new film, Hypnotic. And it was just really surreal to sit across from a director whose films we've been watching for years. And Rodriguez has always been this kind of wild card director from day one. I mean, his first film, El Mariachi, he made for $6,000 with his friends, and it got some awards at Sundance, and that got him the funding for Desperado, and then he did Once Upon a Time in Mexico. But he's always done his own thing, and what's always made him special is that he's avoided Hollywood, he's avoided the studio system, and he's made his films on his terms, no matter what movie you're talking about. And we learned a lot about, I mean, especially Sin City, they were telling us that he just made this pitch to Frank Miller. He shot the first scene on his own with Josh Hartnett and the actress at his studio, and then just forced a meeting with Frank Miller in a way to show him that opening scene. And then he made a fake trailer that he cut together, and he put Bruce Willis's name in the Sin City trailer, and then he accidentally, quotation marks, ran into Bruce Willis at the gym and showed him on his laptop this trailer with Bruce Willis's name in it, and that got Bruce Willis to be like, yeah, sign me up, I'm going to do this movie. So he's always done this thing where he does things his own way. He doesn't listen to anyone, and there's something really special about that, and you can't help but deny that he could be the ultimate independent filmmaker, especially to this point where, like you said, his studio, Troublemaker Studios, it is 100% its own self-contained studio. They do everything from making props to costume production design to any editing or visual effects, ADR recording. They shoot the movie posters there, so it's really fantastic what he has set up. And without further ado, let's get into this interview with Robert Rodriguez. Then we'll continue more of all that fun stuff after the interview, but let's get to it. And just a heads up, so it's Robert Rodriguez as well as his sons Rebel and Racer. They had some labs. We had a boom mic, so the audio is a little different for us versus them, but you can hear everything fine. And we really hope you enjoy this interview we got to do with Robert Rodriguez at Troublemaker Studios. We had a great time watching it at Troublemaker Studios in your theater. Thanks so much for the invite. It's terrific.
Absolutely.
Of course. Welcome.
Glad you can make it.
So our first question, we know Ben Affleck's an accomplished director. Is there a difference working with an actor who knows production so well in terms of you're explaining what kind of lens you're using, what kind of shot you're setting up?
Definitely. And it's not even that you have to get into such specifics. It's more like if I'm filming him and I'm like, God, can you just throw me that line 2 different ways? I'm going to change it. He's like, gotcha. You know, he's been on that side. He just knows what it takes to get something done, especially on a clock where we just didn't have a lot of time. So helpful, you know, sometimes an actor go, but why do I have to put my hand there? It doesn't feel natural. He's like, I got it. From that angle, it probably looks weird, right? So I'll do that. You know, it's just a godsend. And I've worked with many actors that are directors, and it's just the best.
And so yesterday you were talking about Alfred Hitchcock and how it was kind of like an influence of like, I want to make like the next like in his line of single name movies. And so can you talk about the inspiration of Hitchcock on this film in particular in your career, and like maybe the green light from Vertigo, is that kind of a reference, or are there references to Hitchcock films?
It wasn't a direct reference, but now that you mention it, yeah, that green light was an unusual one. It was an LED lights we were trying early on. I wanted to just give that thing more color because it was an underground facility. He had lots of colors going on. I said, we can play with color in this scene. Other scenes are a little more just, they have to be real for real. Here we can go a little crazy. We went a little crazy with it. And definitely, some of my favorite Hitchcock type shots are in that scissor scene. And it feels very much like a Hitchcock scene. It's all $2 tricks, you know. Well, you got scissors in your hand, now you don't have them in your hand, and you're like, wait, what? So on the editing, it'll make sense. But I definitely just wanted lots of twists, something that was star-driven, like Hitchcock would do. He would always have Cary Grant or Jimmy Stewart or Sean Connery or somebody headlining his movie, big ideas, bigger than the budget that you have. So if you have a medium-sized budget or a small budget, have your idea be bigger than your budget so that the audience can just dream about this idea that you've created and go like, wow, Hypnotics could be everywhere, you know? So that if you did get a big budget, great, but if you don't, the idea is just really big. So Hitchcock just had big ideas and big set pieces. He would like reverse engineer a movie from, I want to chase on the top of the Mount Rushmore, and I want at the UN building a murder to happen, and I want, you know, and then he would figure out a script from there.
Yeah, I just saw The Birds the other day. I'm like still trying to figure out how he did the visual effects back in '63 on that movie. It's
matte paintings, a lot of matte paintings, you know, some miniatures.
It's incredible.
And then the rest just $2 tricks, which we did a lot of here, a lot of just sleight of hand, a lot of craftsmanship in that. That's what I was looking forward to doing, keeping that aspect to it, not just, you know, getting the money hose and trying to wash your problems away. Use the creativity to solve those challenges.
And we're actually learning that ourselves. We just made our first short film a few months ago.
Yeah,
so
really?
It was great. It was amazing.
It's great. You learned so much.
Yeah, and we're
Just
submitting
keep
it to
making
festivals right now. Do you have any advice for young filmmakers, or if there are people who maybe they think, I can't make a movie, I don't live in Hollywood, what's your advice for them?
Stay home. Yeah. I stayed home and look what I built. I have something bigger than they have in Hollywood. No one's got their own studio in Hollywood.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Just stay home, do it, build up your film community around you. Our community has just grown out of control over the years, and it just feels so much better that you can just do it at home. You can do that now. And you can just get it seen now from anywhere. So you don't have to be in Hollywood. In fact, the mindset, when I'd go to Hollywood, I would just see people everywhere are in the business. They're just talking about the projects they'll never make. And I was like, I'm gonna go back home and go work on the 3 projects I got going right now. You just go home and just make your stuff and just keep making more. And if you're not ready, people sometimes they'll say, well, hearing you talk, I'm really inspired, but you know, I kind of got a project that's almost ready to go. Actually, all the elements are pretty much there. So I don't think I'm ready yet. Like, life and art should be the same. You're not ready for life. You know, you came down here, your flight wasn't canceled, luckily, but it could have been. You know, you never know what's going to happen. You always have to roll with it, right?
Yeah.
How come art has to be different? How come you have to be ready for art? You shouldn't be. You should just jump in. You're ready to go. I think you're submitting to festivals, go already start making your next short. Don't even wait for the results of that. Nothing feels better than when you're like, right now we're finishing Spy Kids, and it's like, oh, we got to go to Cannes for Hypnotic. It's like, that's good when you have multiple things going on. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, and you learn so much on each one. So if you're not ready, just start, because you'll get ready, right? You felt more ready by the end of that project than you did when you started.
It was great.
Best time ever.
As you're doing it is when you get ready. You start figuring it out. Only as you're doing it. You can't pre-see the stuff that's going to happen. You have no way of predicting that. You have to just jump in the deep end. Like I told him when he was going to write his first score, it's like, it's all right. Just throw you in the deep end. You get a lung full of water, we'll fish you out. He was like, is that what it's going to be like? And it was. That's the only way to learn.
The score was great, by the way. We're big film score listeners. Who were some of your inspirations, and what was like your motivation artistically, creatively, for the sound of this movie that you were going for?
Yeah, so my first feature film score that I did was Red 11, a little $7,000 movie, and that was all synth-based. It was like John Carpenter-esque, just kind of pulses and stuff like that. Just keep it driving. And then we did We Can Be Heroes afterwards, and that was like superhero epic, all orchestral music, so they're completely different. And so I knew for this one, I was like, I want to do synth and orchestra, hybridize it a little bit. And the inspiration of it was really, I wanted the moment he told me, Hitchcock based, I always kind of knew that, okay, it's got a like Vertigo and like Psycho. I always loved how it kind of told the whole story in that intro. The intro songs they have tells you kind of the idea of it all. And so I knew it had to have like a head spinning sort of thing to it.
Bernard Herrmann, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that kind of Vertigo-esque sound, but with synth instead would be really cool. And it was in the talks a lot throughout when we were first coming up with it, but repeating sounds, a lot of repeating sounds, like as if you're, you got the watch kind of moving in front of you, that hypnotic sort of thing to lull you into it. And we even ended up planning it where some parts, she's tapping the pen and the music's right in line with it if you pay attention. So just the whole thing's lulling you in and you don't even realize it. So it kind of has that hypnotic aspect to it.
I want to watch it again.
It's the benefit of all of us getting to work together, and usually the composer doesn't come on until the end of the project, but as we're writing it, we already get to sit down with him and go, look, we're here's where we're thinking of having music sync up to these actions, and so we get to talk of, oh, do this instead, so we can have that sync up, and then the pen, and then the bar, the cell cage bars, and all that.
I love
so
that.
it's really fun.
So in a way, he's years ahead of any other composer because he's in there from the inception of it, and we're writing it out, and he's already playing music, and then we're hearing that as we film, and then he sees the first like big heist scene at the beginning and realizes, oh, okay, the swirling stuff's not going to work here. This is going to be something to connect all these scenes together with real drive and propulsion, and that's where the secondary theme comes in.
Yeah, definitely a big part of making scores is knowing you kind of have to figure out which scene is going to be the keystone that really opens it up and creates the ideas you generate there, kind of fill out the rest of the score and give it life. That was one of those scenes. It was like, I wrote the main theme, which is that swirling kind of sound of it. It really started that a year before we even started filming. It was right when they were telling me about it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And gave me that idea of that kind of interesting hypnotic feel. But that scene especially was like, it's not really working there. There's like there's got to be something that just pushes this movie, and that really elevated it. Because I mean, you see how it's even edited, and it moves the pace. You're not hitting these turns these twists slowly. I mean, the movie's driving you. You're just getting whacked left and right. It's just, it moves. You're
not editing it with a temp track. You're using his music while you're editing.
Yeah, I can edit with his temp track. He sent me some stuff that I thought, this works great. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't predicting it. He told me he was gonna, write a piece that just drove that whole sequence, and I was like, wow, let's see what that's like.
We love the family business aspect because our dad is a small business owner, and we have 4 brothers. So we've all worked for him. Tombstones, not movies. They sell tombstones.
Oh wow!
So we love the family business aspect. What's it like? Like, is it just like fantastic collaborating and artistically?
It's the dream. You're just there was never any separation between work and play. I always kind of pioneered working at home back in the day. Not only was I the only movie in the Sony lot editing digitally back on Desperado in '94, I was editing out of my house. Even Jim Cameron came over and said, "You're editing? Here you have an Avid in your living room." Yeah, look, I'm editing Desperado, Dusk Till Dawn in 4 rooms all at the same time myself. And he said, I'm gonna do that. I'm tired of working with editors. I'm gonna tear down all my house. I'm gonna put it in Avid. I'm gonna cut my next movie. And he got an Oscar for editing Titanic afterwards. That's amazing. But it was like I was editing out of the house, working out of the house, because I wanted to be home with my family. I didn't want to go work. I didn't want to have a job. I always felt like drawing cartoons and making my movies was always a home endeavor. I liked being creative at home. That's where the ideas were. So this is an extension of my home. I live 10 minutes from here. And so I just thought, I don't want to have to go to LA and then go work. I'm an artist. I want to just make art. If I can make a living at it, even better. But I'm going to make it anyway. I'm going to be doing it anyway. This is what I love to do.
Speaking of the script, I'm sorry.
Oh no, just having us all working on it from the beginning, it's easy to work with him because all the time when we were growing up, we'd be making drawings, making each other laugh. And some of that stuff would get into the movies. And the stuff that wasn't just kept as our personal, home movies and home stuff. And they didn't ever know what stuff was actually going to show up in a film and which wasn't. So then when we do it with real purpose, it's just a blast. It really is like a family business. My favorite restaurant when I was in high school was this family-run restaurant where it was called Rolando's Super Tacos. Rolando was at the front with his wife working the store. His daughter was one of the waitress, one of the sons was one of the waitress, and the manager. Someone was in the back cooking, someone was sweeping the floor. You could tell they were there forever because it's their restaurant. They all worked there with pride. And it's like that. This is my version of that.
Yeah.
Speaking of the script, and so when the writing process for Hypnotic specifically, like you said, who has their own movie studio, how much did having your studio affect the script with the writing? Because you're using to your advantage all the space plus the false walls and the locations to have those dream reality sequences. Did that help the script so much?
Yeah, well, initially we thought we would be filming in LA, or because of COVID, it really pushed how we could make this film, and that we wouldn't be able to film it in Austin. So had to push it to LA and then to Canada at one point, so we didn't know what we would get to use, and we had to just keep adapting the writing together until that point. But then as with each COVID shutdown, you lose part of the budget because the movie is pre-sold, and by the time it comes back to Austin, we go, well, shoot, we have something we can use. We got the city we know really well, we got these rooms we know really well, we got this backlot we know really well, so we had adapted the script a lot to fit what we got, which is one of the most
It's nice not seeing in LA in every movie.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's good for fun. And then this place has changed so much. I've been shooting here, over 20 years, and the city's grown so much. Then we go out there, it's a whole different city to explore now. I can shoot this for another 20 years and never see the same location twice.
Was there a Desperado reference, the pissing on the bartender? Was that a
Yeah,
reference
yeah,
to
from Desperado.
I thought so, yeah.
So there's some things that you hear like that one or see from other movies and you go, I think I've seen or heard that before. And those are all clues about, that you're in a hypnotic construct, because it's all about filmmaking in a way. I wanted it to feel like this is what we do as storytellers. We're just sitting here talking, but when you look, there's a guy in a camera, and there's someone over there watching a monitor, and someone's monitoring the sound. It's all artifice. And I thought, audiences pay money to go sit in a theater and have a hypnotic construct put around them, so they believe the story long enough to believe in it, laugh in it, cry, cheer. But they know their actors, they know their lines, but if the filmmaker does it well enough, they believe it's real enough for the moment it lasts. So I wanted the movie to feel like that, very meta, behind the scenes, keep pulling the layers back. and you're like, oh wow, I just did this to myself. And they did it to me.
And you came up with the idea 20 years ago?
Yeah.
And so how does it feel to work on it with your sons, the story, and build it together, and finally, 20 years later, have it come to fruition?
Yeah, it's crazy, being 5 years old when he first came up with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go over the years, hear whispers of this project. Hypnotic, that's a cool idea. That's a cool name.
Someday.
It's a movie. We'll make it.
Didn't know they
and
would.
you never gave up on it.
Didn't know they'd go from crawling to running to walking to then
Writing.
forging with me on it. And it would take that long that I saw him morph into my cast and crew.
All through our childhood, we just kept hearing about it. It just grew to this mythical status because we didn't know what it was about. We just kind of had a little inkling of it, and the word really kind of stuck with you. It's hypnotic. What is it?
Yeah.
And it stuck with us the whole time. So when they, I don't know what it was like when you guys first started working on it, but when they brought it to me and they're like, hey, we're making it happen, I was like, really? Oh my gosh. Well, I want to read it. What is it about? It's just finally.
Yeah, we're still working on it. It's been 20 years. We're still working on it.
The coloring of the film, red's a very important color that you see in this film throughout the entire course of the film. And was that clear in your mind,
I just
using that
love
color?
reds, and and Quentin still has some old IB Technicolor prints where the reds, this process called Technicolor back in the day, the reds were super saturated. And if you're lazy about lighting, just put someone in a red dress and just hit them with a light, and it just glows off the screen like film prints can't capture. Or that's why James Dean has that red jacket, because it was shot in Technicolor instead of black and white, switched. So I always try to get that old, because I've seen it in real prints and it's just stunning and unbelievable. So I've always tried to capture that, and I like red as a standout color. You actually have to mute it. If we were to film this building and you see the exits red, it draws your eye. So I always desaturate reds that you don't want, or oranges, like cones in the, those emergency cones. They draw your eye right away, so you always have to desaturate them, which you can do now with digital color timing. You can isolate certain colors. But when you want it to pop, a dominant color, really red is a very strong color. That's why in Sin City even I kept a lot of reds. Even Blood, it would just in black and white just look like mud, and then you would have it pop this red color, and it looks like 3D almost. Powerful.
The stunts in this movie were great too.
Oh,
out of
great.
nowhere, hopping on the motorcycle, and I'm like, what was your favorite stunt that you guys got to film?
Ooh, definitely. There's a moment where someone has to hit the windshield.
I was going to say, right out here.
It's crazy.
Hit zone's right over
Border's
there.
right there. We can test it out, right?
We use that van, and you film scenes out of order. We had already used that van in the scene that it's supposed to be in later in the film. And so we know the windshield was intact when we filmed that later scene, right? So when we tell them, okay, you got to hit the windshield, just don't damage it too much, because we already saw that it was fixed. Was the first take, he goes, or some guy jumps, leaps, super excited, hits it, spider webs across the whole glass, and we go, oh gosh, should we redo it? Should we get another windshield in or something? But seeing Ben's face through the glass, and we use a shot of it later, seeing Ben's face through that spiderweb glass, it's like, God, he looks like a monster in there. And it's a turning point for the whole movie.
Yeah.
So we thought, we'll just fix the glass later.
Yeah.
We'll just CG it later.
And
So-
you only had a handful of visual effects shots, but they looked fantastic.
Oh, great.
Did you learn a lot from Alita, especially, and that you brought into this, or?
I mean,
Yeah, you've always been pioneering.
City,
yeah, I always
VFX.
try to work in VFX and didn't want to have too many visual effects. I wanted a lot of it to be kind of sleight of hand. But yeah, a few times you have to bring him out because he's seeing things that aren't real. and you want to go more heightened, but I didn't want to rely on it too much. Some movies can really pull it off really well, whether you just constantly seeing visual effects. We knew we wouldn't have that kind of time or that kind of budget, so it was being more selective. And that's what Hitchcock would do. He would save his money shots for a few big shots, and then the rest he would just use tricks and trickery. And so my favorite were the non-effect shots. Those are just like the most fun, where it's just like, really, you just do it by, it's just edit. It's just an edit trick. And you're just like, whoa, did I just see something? I'm seeing things, because you're not expecting it.
And you guys, since you film so much here in your studio, are you building props and obviously sets, and like how much of it would you say you're constructing yourself? Are you using 3D printers and stuff like that at all?
Oh
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, they'll show you our archive. Every prop we make, we keep the molds, we make copies so that we can always call them up. We have a whole arsenal of stuff. We have tons of, just over the years, every costume we've ever made. So we have stock for when we need doctors or nurses or cops or anything. We just pull them. And we just got all that stuff. So we can just utilize a lot of it, or we 3D print new things, mold it, keep the mold. So we can just call that stuff up. So a lot of the stuff we can just pull out of our arsenal of things already made. We have real ones, fake ones, rubber ones, prop, all kinds of versions of everything. So it's really fun though.
It's impressive, but we're out of time.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time.
Sure,
gentlemen.
man. Glad you guys can make it down. Congrats to you guys. Keep making it.
Yeah,
Keep cranking.
Yeah,
That's where I
that's
started.
so
I started
awesome.
with just the short films.
We appreciate it.
And
Yeah.
it really taught me how to make a feature. Feature just is a longer short film. You just like, it's just, once you know how to do it in a short film format, making the jump. My next movie, after making a bunch of short films that were winning awards and festivals, was Mariachi. And I just repeated it the story like three times. I just had things happen 3 times to stretch the movie out. And Jon Stewart, as a comedian, said, "Are you a comedian? Because you followed the rule of 3s." And I go, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, like Mariachi. The guy lights this match on a guy's face, but on the 3rd time it's on his head, or he jumps in the truck 3 times, and the 3rd time it's the bad guy's truck." Or, and I was like, "Oh no, it's just because I was used to making short films, and I just repeated everything 3 times to pad it out." He goes, "Oh, that's the,
Trying to get that word count on your essay.
exactly. I was like, "Oh, that made it very comedic that way. Oh, who knew?" But short films teach you a lot. So.
Love it. We appreciate it.
And
Well,
they're
thanks for being
bite-sized ways to just get experience and jump.
exactly. Yeah.
Good luck to you guys.
Congratulations,
Appreciate it.
guys. So nice to meet you.
Nice
Thanks
to
so
meet
much.
you.
Great pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Congrats.
Likewise.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Congrats on the movie.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you.
Appreciate it.
And we're back. That was such a cool interview and experience to actually meet a director that we've been watching the films of for many years since we were kids. Our older brothers would actually show us From Dusk Till Dawn, the 4 Rooms anthology film that he made with Tarantino and a couple other directors. So we had been watching Rodriguez movies since we were little. And as we grew older, we began to understand what kind of a filmmaker he was, what kind of director he was. And like I said earlier, he's one of the greatest independent filmmakers of all time. And it was just like such a cool experience to finally meet him. And it was just a wonderful day, especially that independent era that boomed in America in the late 80s, early 90s between him and filmmakers like Linklater and Tarantino, Soderbergh, coming up with just these great stories, but making movies on tight budgets that, kind of just changed the studio system in a lot of ways. And with Rodriguez, like we said, no filmmaker, and like you said in the interview, has the situation he has on planet Earth. He is so unique in terms of having his own movie studio, and this place is not like up for tours. You can't visit it. It's a very private situation. You have to get an invite. So we're very fortunate to be able to have gone to Troublemaker Studios and go to Austin and have this incredible experience, because it was surreal. And I wasn't super nervous really leading up into the interview until like we were like in the waiting room. They make you wait for like 2 hours.
We waited a while.
And then there's
Just
the
sitting there.
the buildup of like, all right, I can only take so many walks in this hallway and drink so many bottles of water before I have to pee 3 times before the interview. And then we finally got put into his massive hangar studio, which is this enormous space, an old plane hangar, which is where they shot Sin City, completely on green screens back there, as well as a lot of Alita and many of his films, a lot of his Spy Kids films, and everything he shoots is there basically, unless it's location based.
And it's not just the green screen. Since they have so much space in the hangar, they build all of the interior sets in that hangar.
Yeah, and so we got to meet him the night before. So Saturday we got a screening of Hypnotic, his latest film, which is coming out in theaters right now. It's hitting the theaters. Yesterday it got premiered.
Yeah,
and
Friday.
This weekend, so definitely check it out if you love sci-fi epics and you're a fan of Robert Rodriguez films like we are. and we got to watch the movie in his own little private movie theater, which was so cool. And like it was
They
just
had like 200 Blu-rays just sitting on a table.
yeah, and they had
It was
they
great.
have a great projector and in a 3D projector too. That's
It looked
where-
really good.
Yeah, he said that's where they test out all their visual effects shots, and they do screenings in there. And if execs come to check out their studios, they'll show them the rough cuts of their movies there. And we saw obviously the green screen room, which is where we got to interview him. And we walked in, and it's Rebel, Robert, and Racer Rodriguez sitting in these 3 chairs, and like we're like, oh crap, this is really the moment that we're gonna get to interview Robert Rodriguez, which was super.
That was your
fun.
thought? Oh crap!
Well, not oh crap, but it was like
I was like, let's go.
I was like, well, not oh crap, but it was just like I've never talked to someone that famous for that long before in my entire life. And
in person.
We've never had really quite an in-person interview before
Never
with
like
someone
that.
of that caliber. You know, someone who's made movies for decades and a great filmmaker and known around the entire
Who has
world.
worked with some of your favorite actors and is also a collaborator and probably best friend with Tarantino.
Yeah, he brought up Tarantino in our interview because you asked him about Red. He's like, "Well, yeah, well, Quentin has a bunch of film stock that Red really pops."
And
up.
I also referenced Desperado, the pissing on the bartender story. It's what Tarantino's character says in Desperado.
Yeah, so it was really cool, and I thought it was so fun. I wasn't really nervous. Maybe like the first couple minutes, I was just like a little jittery when we were talking to him, but then it just felt like a podcast, honestly.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are probably like, why didn't you ask him about Spy Kids, Alita Battle Angel? Because I think, you know, we were there to help him market his film Hypnotic.
That's why we're there.
And we wanted to pay respect to that and really just focus on the questions of him and his career with his sons, as well as the production of Hypnotic and the movie Hypnotic, because that's why we got flown out there. We didn't get flown out there to ask him all these questions, which I'm sure a lot of the other interviewers did. There were probably 10 other people there interviewing him.
And they
separately.
were big fans. There were a lot of big Spy Kids fans.
Yeah, and
so I'm
I
sure
mean,
they
Spy
did.
Kids is cool, and Alita
Yeah.
Battle Angel is awesome, and so, but we really want to just, you know, be respectful in terms of why we're there to interview him about Hypnotic and ask questions about the film.
We are part of the press tour for the film, essentially. So we felt that, you know, we could ask him about Alita, we could ask him about From Dusk Till Dawn, we can ask him about Tarantino, but like, it's like they flew us out there, they gave us this incredible tour. The least we can do is really try our best to advertise this film for them and get people aware of the film existence. And it was really fantastic because he was so easy to talk to. He was so chill and laid back. Like once we were actually shooting the shit before we started rolling.
Yeah,
like the 5 of us, we were cracking up.
The
before-
tech team
yeah.
told us twice, like, we're ready.
We were all I can't remember what we were laughing about, but it was really funny.
I think we were talking about how his thing is a family business now, just like how we had a family business.
I think I said like our dad made us carry drywall, something like that.
These kids have been carrying boom mics.
Yeah. But he was a really cool guy, and he was very respectful and happy, and they were very generous with their time. And I really enjoyed the process. But also the tour of the studio was just magnificent because aside from the hangar, so it's basically this big piece of land that he owns, and it's all walled off.
I'm sure we only still have a small portion of it.
There are a few buildings. One building contains that big hangar, as well as like the main working operations, you could say, where they probably hold lots of meetings. They've also filmed plenty of things there for like, they have so many rooms like hallways and
It seems
and
like their day-to-day, yeah.
Exactly. And then there are a couple of other buildings. We only went into one of the buildings, and this is where the production designer and costume designer both work, and they develop ideas and concept art, and then actually create pieces, whether it be things for costuming or for actual sets. And they took us on this really fantastic tour of all the costumes they've done in previous Rodriguez films, and also looking at concept art from the previous films, as well as they took us on a tour of the actual workshops of Troublemaker Studio, where we saw the carpentry room, we saw where they make sets, build walls, doors, whatever you would see for an interior set, as well as the prop room where they 3D print every single prop, and it's just
I told you he was 3D
it was
printing, man. I called
unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Like they had like 20 3D printers, and
so actually, real quick
for it.
context, we didn't take the tour until after the interview.
Yes.
So we asked him questions about his production process, and I brought up, are you 3D printing? Because that was our guess, and I was assuming he was 3D printing because we hadn't seen the tour yet.
Yeah.
FYI.
Because I asked him if they make their props here. He was like, yeah, and then you were like, do you 3D print them? He's like, oh yeah, we do everything. And I've seen one 3D printer in my life, but there were literally 20 of them.
I've been telling you for years
It was
that
crazy.
everyone's 3D printing stuff now. It's huge, especially like you 3D print a gun, and it's a super lightweight, inefficient, safe Yeah.
firearm that looks real as hell on camera.
And then part of the warehouse is just like this huge, basically construction area where it's just all woodwork and paint, where they're actually cutting wood, putting walls together, crafting furniture for all of their sets. And it was just so cool to see where, because we've done tours at Warner Brothers, at Universal, and it has all the same stuff. But for Rodriguez to have all of these components to film production on site in Austin, in his property, is honestly mind-boggling, because you can only compare it to the Warner Brothers studio and the Universal studio. It's like insane how it's like the same thing, but it's his own fucking thing.
Well, the cool thing about this tour is we saw behind the scenes of that. When you take those Warner Brothers tours, you kind of walk past the prop departments and set departments, but you don't get to see like what it's like behind the scenes and how those things are actually made every day.
I was looking through some of the bills they had, like from orders, like order bills on the wall. Like I was like, this is so fascinating.
They make props and outsource their own props for other production companies around the world. So they make props, detailed 3D props for all kinds of people, which is really cool. And also, I mean, we saw some cool cars. We saw the 2 cars from Death Proof. We saw the yellow Mustang, as well as
the cop car from Sin City.
Oh, the cop car. Yeah, and then we saw, what was it, the white Camaro? Or is it a Chevelle that, what's her name?
I think it's a Camaro.
That Zoe
Bell.
Zoe Bell does the stunt on top, the hood of, which is so cool. Yeah, the cop car from Sin City. And it was just really awesome and surreal. We saw a little bit of behind the scenes of the production design of Hypnotic, which was cool.
For all you Spy Kids fans, there was a ton of Spy Kids props, memorabilia, and also most of the bathroom doors, they had thumb people on the doors. And I know a lot of people kept asking us, are there thumbs?
Yeah. So the men's and women's rooms, it was a thumb human, a thumb person.
Yeah.
But it was a really, really incredible experience, and I hope it's the first of many that we get to do. I feel so fortunate to have been able to us get invited to this trip and tour this incredibly unique movie studio and check out his movie a week before it comes out in his own private theater, and actually meet him and shake his hand and talk to him and his sons, and how his sons are, it's like a family business making movies now, which is so cool. And I have even more respect for Robert Rodriguez as a filmmaker, which I already had a ton, but to see his process behind the scenes of him being outside the studio system doing this on his own, it's so unique and rare, and no other filmmaker has this set up on the planet.
Yeah, and also he was very encouraging when we told him that we just made a short film, and he seemed to really like that, and he seemed really into it.
He's a really cool guy. He's a super cool guy.
Yeah.
And we really enjoyed talking with him, but I hope you enjoyed the interview, and we hope you enjoyed this quick breakdown recap of our trip down to Austin to Troublemaker Studios in Texas. We had a blast, and yeah, that wraps our cool experience we had with Robert Rodriguez, the freaking
Our first
legend.
director interview.
Legend.
Yeah.
Freaking awesome, dude.
It's crazy.
What a blast. So
We could have talked to him for hours.
yeah, so thank you to our reps who got us that, and also Troublemaker Studios and Robert Rodriguez. Congratulations on your film, and thanks for the invite
And
and the
Nixon
interview.
showing us around, amazing tour.
Yeah. It was a really surreal and incredible experience.
Thank you so much for tuning in. See y'all next time.